by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Ilya able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal.
And the fans want one. Score! On the floor! On the board! Paul Kariya!
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Forever Mighty Postgame Show. Pat, Ed, and Steve, or broke-ass Pete Davidson on the mics tonight. And I just got to say, I really don't like anybody throwing hate out there tonight on this OT loss. Everyone's throwing hate on Gibby. I got to start the show with that, guys. This game, besides the first 5 minutes of the first period, was a Anaheim. And then maybe Gibby doesn't really get a lot on his pass. Bails the Ducks out and then gets stuffed on the wraparound. But any hate being thrown at Gibson, just walk away from this team, please. just walk away.
He's getting it done again, right? I mean, so it's all we've kind of asked for him this season is to get back to the same form that we're used to seeing from him. And I know it's early; it's only 3 games from him so far, but you know he's on top of his game. If there's no question right now who the best player in the Ducks is, and the reason why the Ducks are scraping a point out against a team like Colorado, it's because of John Gibson.
Yeah, I mean, the pass was bad, but he recovered, and then he made, he made he made that save, and then it goes to wrap around, and Silfverberg just leaves him on an island. Like, Silfverberg didn't even really try that hard to get his stick to the post, and it's like, all right, that's a thing.
It also is the Avs best player, like one of the best players. It's not Nate McKinnon, it's Landeskog, sure, but I mean that lineup is ridiculous. But still, missed assignments throughout this game. I mean, it happened, but they were pretty glaring on that play. I laugh at anybody. Cheers to you guys who are rooting against John Gibson here. If you listen to this show, I just don't get it, man. And I don't like goalies. I think it's like the second show I've been on where I'm like, I don't like goalies, and I'm
How do you
here
not
defending
like goalies?
because they're baby, dude. They get these giant pads, and you can't touch them, and they go behind the net. If you bump them, it's a penalty. Unless it's John Gibson, you're allowed to bump Gibby, and there's no penalty. I mean, we've seen that time and time again. But yeah, I just had to give that shout out to Gibson to start the show, because what otherwise was a great game, miscue and OT just kind of buried him there. But a lot of surprises in tonight's game, I thought, guys. I want to go around the horn here for a minute and just, what was your biggest standout from tonight's game away from Gibby? I mean, because I think we saw solid hockey from Anaheim in the first time in 5 games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was kind of a series of like, oh, that guy looks better than I thought. I think originally from the jump, I was looking at Jonesy and I was watching him and I was like, yeah, man, that's the dude that I like, right? Super energetic, getting in on the forecheck, aggressive, throwing his body around. He is, to me, a top 9 forward. He's not a top liner. He's not really a top 6 guy. But he is going to do the same thing no matter who you play him with. He doesn't necessarily have, the most high-end finishing skill, but I think he's a better playmaker than people give him credit for. And that's just what you want him to do. You want him to run around and bang bodies. After that, I actually was kind of impressed with Akinpaa this game. I thought he actually looked... He didn't seem, to be playing on the end of his stick too much. He was moving his feet. It's all that little stuff. And I think a couple shows ago, I was not that high on him. And he was definitely better than I expected him to be tonight. So,
for me, it was the Henrique and Silfverberg line. I thought they actually got things done tonight, which is surprising when you take a player like Rickard Rakell and you take, I guess, the offensive flair off that line. And how well that Rico, Rakell, Silfverberg line is gelled in the past. You wouldn't think that putting Danton Heinen with them for a night, after they didn't look so great, that they would actually be a solid kind of line for the Ducks tonight. So I think that was the one thing for me that stood out is obviously Henry gets on the score sheet and that looks good on paper at the end of the game. But I think if you look at how these guys played tonight, they were clearly the Ducks' number 1 line, and that's what the Ducks need them to be. I mean, Adam Henrique was their number 1 scorer last year. He needs to be putting the puck in the back of the net if the Ducks want to, get a win or get a point out of a game.
Can you guys guess who my favorite player of the night was? I mean, take a wild guess here. I'm just curious.
Pierre-Luc Dubois.
That is the biggest topic of tonight's show after the breakdown of the game. But for me, it was Lindy. I think Lindy had a hell of a game tonight. If you look at the underlying stats, you're like, oh, his Corsi percentage blew. He wasn't that good. Like shot attempts, this and that. But look at the actual shots against that they let in on that defensive pair. And they faced McKinnon. I don't know. It felt like an eternity every time they're out on the ice. Shattenkirk, on the other hand, though, guys, shaky again tonight. That was one of the things I noticed today too. Besides all the positives, Shat's had a couple of miscues in tonight's game. Looked a little shaky on the blue line. I don't know if you guys saw McKinnon break his ankles there, but that was always a good time. It's not like it never happens. McKinnon breaks everyone's ankles, but Lindy was my player. But I mean, honestly, I got to agree with both you guys there. And then Danton Heinen. We've been talking about him in the first 5 games. It's been kind of invisible, at least a chance here and there, but he had a hell of a game too. That guy was just no puck luck tonight. And I think that was mentioned in our chat here on Twitch. But the puck luck just, I mean, shoot, the Ducks just can't break through. Only 2 goals again.
Yeah, Shattenkirk blew a tire, I think, three times on that shift. You know, he got his ankles broken by Nathan McKinnon, and he, skating back, I think 30 seconds later, he blew a tire and fell down, and somebody else fell down, and in overtime, we saw 2 of our own players collide into each other. So at some point, you're wondering if the ice isn't that great out there, or what's going on with Shattenkirk.
That was Steele's fault, dude. That was not Lindholm's fault.
That was funny.
It's never Hampus' fault.
Oh no, there's no world in which that wasn't the funniest fucking thing. I was like, all right, we made it past 7 seconds in the overtime. We won the face-off. This is going. All right, fine. That's just is what it is, man. That made me laugh so hard as soon as I saw that.
Did you guys have high hopes for the OT though? Like I was worried going in. I was really worried going into it, but then the Ducks kind of had, retained control there for the first couple of minutes, and I was like, not too bad, not too bad.
Yeah, no, it was fine. I don't, I think it kind of sums it all up that the Colorado Avalanche had 2 defensemen on the ice and still had the 2 most effective offensive players on the ice. You know what I mean? Like, Cale Makar is that good, And so, for me, every time they get to overtime, it's money in the bank. It's free money, man. I'll take the point. I'll take the extra hockey. If we get lucky, we win the game. If not, you take the point. It helps a little bit over the course of a season, from not feeling like you weren't in any games. But, my focus is just going to be really the season is just kind of how they are playing and how they're handling the ups and downs of 60 minutes. Because that to me is, unless, as we'll get to later, somebody else walks into this lineup, there's no reason to think that they are going to be incredibly competitive every game. And there's no reason to expect them to win, 50% of their games. So for me, how do they look? How do they respond? How do they play? You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of armchair crap, but it's a lot of body language and little things like that. And you just try to see where they're at as a team. And I think, tonight they look good. They were energetic. So
the Ducks had one strategy going into overtime, and that was to not let Colorado have the puck at any cost. I mean, for the entire.
Thanks, John Gibson.
Yeah, I mean, why would you want to give the puck to Nathan McKinnon or Cale Makar, right?
So you can go home.
Yeah, pretty much. So you can hit the bus, hit the showers. I mean, they could roll Makar and McKinnon out there with Devin Taves for the first unit, and then Makar stays out there, and Landeskog and Rantanen come over the boards. Like, it doesn't get any easier. No wonder you don't want them to have sustained zone pressure with those are the first 2 units. And we talked about Vegas's first 2 units. I think those first 2 units for Colorado are probably the best you could have in the entire league. When you look at pure skill and just size and speed with Landeskog and Rantanen, the Ducks, it almost paid off for them. They got a couple good chances, but you look at the first time they lost control of the puck, it's on John Gibson for that one, but it's in the back of the net.
That was brutal, and I get it, but Gibby he saved the game on that penalty shot.
Yeah.
I don't know how we're breaking this game down tonight. I think I'm just gonna pluck stuff out of the first, second, and third period.
Yeah, no.
I'm not gonna go in a linear format. Screw it. Just kind
Tarantino
of free
episode
flow
tonight.
there.
Let's go.
I gotta say though, is Colorado not one of those teams this year where like I forgot these guys were in the league? Like Brendan Saad's on Colorado. I was
Yeah.
like, I swear I knew that, but then again, like I didn't know it. And then Valerie Nikushkin, I was like, huh.
That was the one that got me.
Huh.
Yeah, he was surprisingly there
remember
last year, and
this
I
guy.
remember looking at that last year and said, he's back from Russia? Like, he returned?
Wait, Nichushkin was on Colorado last
Yeah,
year?
he played a few games for them last year. I'm not sure how many. I think it was at least 10.
I did not know that at all. That's
Very
crazy.
odd, right?
Yeah, no, like the Sod one I remember just because I remember they traded Zadorov, and I was like, yeah, if you could make that trade, then you have to do it. Get rid of, the worst defenseman on your team. And then they bring in, Devin Taves, and the rest of that is just, the rest of that blue line is solid as hell. Bowen Byram already walked in, looked like a top 4 player
Talk about
tonight.
embarrassment
He
of
did.
riches. I mean, Byram and Makar.
Yeah.
And, man, we watched a lot of Byram in the World Juniors this year, and
You watched a lot of Byram because he was playing with, as you guys would say, Drysdale out there in Canada.
if only we
right?
could have
Yeah.
Byram with Drysdale, would be our blue line would be sorted. But I mean, you saw that head fake or that shoulder fake he pulled on Getzlaf, sent him the wrong way, and then obviously the assist where he went back to that. If you look at his assist, he pulls a shoulder fake again to get to the same position, and this time he throws a pass across. Like, the confidence in a kid, and especially a defenseman, to pull a move like that on Ryan Getzlaf, and then not only that, to see that it worked, and then to do that move again, and then set up a teammate for a goal. Like, this guy's second NHL game, and you think the Avalanche going forward have McKinnon, Rounton, and Landeskog. They brought in Kadri, they've got Makar and Byram now. It's like Grubauer looked unbelievable for them tonight. Like, they have. This is why people think they can win the Stanley Cup, right? Like this.
When he had to, Steven, he looked unbelievable. When he had to.
I think it is fair to say he made the saves that he needed to make to win the game. I do not think if you watch that game, you're coming away going that goaltending isn't the issue. Now, part of that is the rest of that roster is so strong, and I understand that it's kind of an unfair context, but I'm still not convinced just from that game alone that Grubauer's the guy to get him to the cup. Like, he could be, but he's never played 40 games in a season. So, you have no idea how it's going to go. I would be a little bit more slow playing it with Grubauer. I'm not convinced.
Eddie, I got a question for you real quick.
Yep.
Actually, for both you guys. But in the chat, Dave brings up a good point. He says, why do other teams have the confidence to bring up and start their young guns, but the Ducks take the slow approach? Why do you think that is here? Like, Byram gets his second NHL game. We're not seeing Drysdale or Zegras, I don't think, anytime in the next handful of games.
It's a mix of a couple things.
Right.
I think organizationally the Ducks just don't do that. They've rarely done that. And for Colorado, I think Byram jumps in. He kind of gave them no choice. And for them, Eric Johnson's out. He's not a left shot defenseman anyway. Ian Cole didn't work out. They traded him. They were in need of a left shot defenseman. As stacked as that team is, they didn't have a guy who could immediately step in and be an impactful player in their lineup from the left side. And they brought in Devin Taves to do that, and then they give Bowen Byram a chance. It's not like they threw him in there to start the season either. This is only his second game, so they kind of worked him in a little bit slower, and that's the Avalanche approach. I mean, they like to get their young guns in when they have a chance. Sometimes it pays off, like it has with Byram. Sometimes it doesn't with Tyson Yost. I think.
Wouldn't you say, though, because they're throwing him in a more successful environment? Like, they're not going to get down on themselves being a young guy without any experience. They're going to play amongst this all-star collection of players on a great team that's bound to either win the division, come close, and go really far. Some have them ticketed for the Stanley Cup final. I think that's the reason why they got brought in, though, right? It might not be just so much of an organizational thing for Anaheim, is that you bring Zegras and Drysdale into this lineup. That's kind of scary. This is not a team that we're expecting to go far.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely a couple of different things. I think one thing is Byram was the 4th pick in the draft 2 years ago. There's a reason for that. You know what I mean? And I think what you saw is someone, they didn't even get close to bringing him up last year. They were just like, it's non-starter. They let him have that 1 year knowing that he was going to come up and all that stuff. And he was able to develop, and then he comes up for a couple games so far, and he looks good. But like you said, I do think a huge part of it is the institution of the team that he's walking into. He doesn't have to walk in, and he's not going to need to be the most creative defenseman. He's not going to need to be the most defensively sound defenseman. He's going to be able to find his footing. It's kind of a few years ago when who was it? Parayko, when he first for or is there a kid in
St. Louis?
I'm thinking of Nashville. Who was
Seth
it in
Jones?
Nashville? I'm just getting
Shea
confused.
Weber,
It was
Roman Yossi.
St. Louis. Is Ryan Sutter that kid?
Oh, that's Minnesota.
But no, but I just think, like you said, like it's 100 and they're insulated, and they don't have to be difference makers right away. Where, for us, if Zegras and Drysdale walked in, would need to start contributing. So
Well, that's what DB Lowry just said in our chat. He says because the Avs aren't asking their young guys to provide 90% of their offense, they can just put them in position. Exactly. I think it's a lot of like a mix of what we're saying here. It's the organization, like Eddie was saying, they don't want to ever underseason anybody after and Eddie's made a point of this before with Cam Fowler. Bob Murray's come out and said they've rushed him, and so they've taken the position to not do that anymore. And now we're looking at these two young kids coming in on D and then one up on the forward group. And these are really highly touted prospects. You don't want to risk any of that. But also, this team can't score. So what do we do?
I think there's an important thing for Bowen Byram, too. The Avs have a history of kind of trying to get their younger players in sooner rather than later. But for Bowen Byram, I think without the pandemic and without the January start, he's back in the WHL this year. The season would have resumed in October. Yeah. You wouldn't have had the World Junior performance to kind of go back on if you're the Avs and say, okay, he's shown us he's ready. He would have been in the WHL this season, which means he would have had no chance to come up until their season was over. But here we are in a pandemic. The first hockey we see this year is the World Junior Championship, and Bowen Byram is excellent for Canada. He wins one of their top 3 players of the tournament, and he can't go back to the WHL because they're not playing right now. So his only option is, he sits on the taxi squad or he plays in the AHL for Colorado, where they give him a shot and see if he can do well, and he's doing well. And I think, honestly, we might have to wait a little bit longer, but I think the Ducks take that same approach this year with Drysdale and Zegras at some point, because, Drysdale can go back to the OHL when it starts. Zegras is AHL eligible in any part. In a regular season, he's AHL eligible, but I think we see them take that approach at some point. Maybe not as soon as the Avs did, but I think some time down the road here that Zegras and Drysdale probably work their way into the lineup.
No, makes a lot of sense. I mean, just the question, I guess, would be like, how soon, right? How soon do we see these kids come in here? We can get to that in just a minute. I want to ask you guys about, and I know, Ed, you saw the game when you could tonight for the most part, so I don't want to put you on the spot here. I'll direct this at Steven mostly because this is his favorite player on the Ducks. Cam Fowler. What'd you think about Fowler and Hakanpää tonight? I mean, really, is Manson going to be able to make it back in the lineup after 6 weeks? I mean, this pairing hasn't looked sloppy.
So it's interesting because, excuse me. The thing that I was thinking about, especially earlier when we were talking about Shattenkirk not having a great game, is I think he, ironically, is the one who is most affected by Manson being out. Because what I think that does is that forces Shattenkirk into a much more defensive role as one of the more senior defensive players on the team. And on top of that, he's playing with Lindholm, who is the best defenseman on the team. And so I think, Shattenkirk in a little bit is being put in a situation where he's not able to be as successful. But Hakanpää looked great tonight. You know what I mean? And Fowler looked good tonight. I think part of it is maybe Fowler played a slightly more conservative game because he's paired with Hakanpää.
Or do you think maybe he doesn't have to worry about Hakanpää taking the rush as much as Manson? Because the Ducks defensemen were activated tonight. I mean, even Hakanpää. I mean, if not for drawing a penalty, he might have scored a goal tonight.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? I think the thing for me is that rush or that chance came kind of off a broken play. You know what I mean? He kind of picks it up and he's able to make a move, and it is great. And I'm not taking anything away from him. I think the thing for me is the fact that Fowler and Hakanpää seem to play so well. I think for Manson is optimistic because I think, you know, to what Eddie's been talking about, and I think you've mentioned a couple times just when we've been talking, you know, it'd be nice to see another pair of maybe Manson-Mahura. You know, and so you can kind of continue to slide or spread that talent out a little bit and see how it goes. You know, Manson hasn't been good this season. You know, he hasn't looked super great. I do think that him and Fowler don't work well together for whatever reason. And I think, you know, if Fowler and Hakanpää is legit, then I think that's a huge win for the Ducks for two reasons. One, either they can keep them separate, put Larson and Manson or Mahura or, you know, maybe Curran gives somebody some chance. Or, look, at the end of the day, they can always just move Manson. You know what I mean?
Okay,
like,
so is that you think that's part of it? That's going to be happening here in the next after he comes back from injury? You think maybe your boy's out?
So I don't think it will happen.
You don't want it to happen.
So, but here's the thing. I think those are related, right? Because like I have made no bones about this. Like I very much like the type of hockey that Bob Murray and Brian Burke like to play. And Josh Manson is that kind of guy. You know what I mean? So for me, I just don't think they're going to move him because of what he brings as far as a little extra toughness, a little extra stability on the back end. You know what I mean? I think the other night it was nice to see him actually engage physically. But at the end of the day, if this Hakanpää Fowler thing is legit, dude, you got to start looking at your assets. You know what I mean? And you got to look at trying to make the team better. And if, you know, this PLD trade goes through for Anaheim, it's absolutely going to cost a roster forward who can score goals. Maybe, and most likely it's Raquel. Okay, so now maybe what you do is you look at Manson and you see if you can get someone who can kind of help fill that role or whatever. It creates a lot of possibilities. And I think if anything, it would be positive.
Do you think he's really a fit coming back when he's healthy? Do you think they could find a partner where he could be successful? I think I'm having a really hard time. Eddie, jump in here anytime you want about Manson, but I just have a hard time distinguishing between who I don't really think is playing well between him and Fowler so far, going back to last season into this season even. It's been a tough go for that pair.
The thing for me is I don't think, you know, not to discredit the play of Yanni Hakanpää because I think he's been good, but, you know, to say that he's going to take Josh Manson's spot because of his play, I think it's more because of the stylistic, you know, pairing when you look at Fowler with a player like Hakanpää. Cam Fowler, historically throughout his entire career, when you look at the pairings he's been on, his most successful seasons, when you look at, you know, his numbers and just, you know, the underlying numbers with who he's played with, it's with a guy who likes to hang back, a defensive defenseman, a guy who really doesn't get up in the play too much unless it's a drawn-up play, like we saw Hakanpää pinch up a couple times, but
like Bieksa.
He did. And we've, you know, when we've all analyzed, you know, Fowler's career over a certain period of time, we go back and we look at his defense pairings and we say, well, no wonder he hasn't broken out the way he thought he was. He's been paired with Bieksa, he's been paired with Gudbranson, he's been paired with this guy, but Fowler and Gudbranson was a good pairing, and Fowler and Bieksa at times was a good pairing, and Fowler and Hakanpää was a good pairing. And what do all three of those guys have in common? They rarely jump up in the play. They sit back.
The chat right now is saying Manson and Larson as a third pair.
And I don't mind it because I think when you look at when Manson's been the most successful, it's with a player like Lindholm. You know, when those two were together, Lindholm is, you know, a little bit more offensive minded than a normal two-way defenseman. He likes to kind of get up in the play every now and then, but he's a responsible player. And, you know, we've always said Larson could be Hampus Lindholm 2.0, and I'll be the first to admit, you know, I'm not a huge fan of Jakob Larson, but he's been okay this year. And I think when you look at him and a player like Josh Mahura, I think there's some, you know, similar stylistic qualities there in terms of their two-way ability and their skating ability, and I think a player like that fits a bit more with Josh Manson. So I think there is a place for Josh. There always is going to be a place for Josh.
That wouldn't be so bad either, because they now give you 3 pairs where you don't have to only play the third pair 11 minutes a night. You can give the other guys a break. You have 2 strong pairings after your top pair. No one's playing 25 minutes necessarily every night. On occasions it's going to happen, but I think that would be like a third pair. That's the thing. I think there's a good opportunity for Anaheim to kind of throw things around. We'll see what they do, though. I mean, realistically, as we've said many times, and Stephen brought it up, Eddie brought it up tonight too. This institution that is Bob Murray's team, they don't like to play away from the stereotypicalness of hockey. So we'll see what that ends up being here. But moving along here, I just want to spend a few more minutes before we get to Dubois, because I feel like that's going to be like a 15-minute conversation, especially with chat and everything going on here. Do you think the breakthrough tonight, guys, by Heinen and Silverberg and Henrique having a monster game statistically under all the underlying numbers, so they crushed a 5-on-5. Clearly, they passed the eye test too. They scored a goal. Do you think this is maybe they finally broke through? Did we uncap the ketchup bottle, so to speak, as we talk about Tebow used to say? I mean, are we finally going to see goals rolling here?
I think it's tough to say that we've cracked the code and they found the chemistry here, and this is all good signs moving forward. I think they had one good game, and it's nice to see. But on paper, a line of Heinen, Henrique, Silverberg doesn't look like a line that's going to put a lot of pucks in the back of the net and put up the points. It kind of looks like the line you throw out there to combat a McKinnon, Rantanen, and Landeskog line, and to limit chances against. So I think they're going to be a valuable line for the Ducks, and I think they're going to contribute offensively every now and then. But we know with pretty much everybody on that line, there's streaks where they do well and there's streaks where they don't. Silverberg's an extremely streaky player in terms of his production, and I think Adam Henrique can be like that too, and we've seen it at the start of the season. Nothing in the first 4 games this year, and I think this was clearly his best game of the season so far. So, we talked last show that the Ducks need to generate more offense just from the top 6 rather than the bottom 6. So all the offense up until that point had come from Comtois, Steele, and Terry, and Delorier, Grant, and Rowney. So it is nice to see Henrique, Heinen, and Silverberg get on the board.
That's such a funny sentence there. And yeah, by the way, in chat, we definitely could see Steven assaulting Eddie's video. For whatever reason, OBS is not being very favorable. Steven's just jumping into Eddie's screen a bunch. It's pretty funny. But, I mean, I could see that happening here. I could see these guys get on a little bit of a roll. I hope so.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely possible. I think for me, I think it speaks very well of Heinen. I didn't get a chance, to watch the game on Wednesday, and I know he was with them a little bit, and, he got sad at the end of the game. But, I think to a degree, I think Heinen has impressed this year in this stint, and I think he looks really good. I think what you see is someone who does, again, all the little things that you want. He doesn't stop moving. He's aggressive on the forecheck. He doesn't let the puck sit on his stick very long. He's ripping one-timers. He's getting shots off. He's looking to make a pass. And I think that has a lot of value. And I think having the ability to inject a little bit of energy into Henrique and Silverberg, I think he got something out of them tonight, and I think that was great. I also think this is the first game after they got benched. You want them to respond positively. What it's going to take is what happens on Sunday. You know what I mean? Do they look like this again on Sunday, or was this just one boost because they got yelled at and now they don't want to be in trouble anymore?
Am I the only one on the show right now that didn't think that puck went in for 10 seconds? And then on the replay, I'm like, where'd that go? I didn't see it hit the netting. It had to hit the camera at the highest point inside the net on Henrique's goal. I was like, they said it scored. I'm like, they're going to pull it back. And my dumbass is watching the stream. I'm like, zooming in. I'm like, where the I want to see is the puck go by Grubauer on the outside of the crease. I'm like, there's no way that puck's in the net. Clearly, I'm an idiot, and I didn't see the angle until they showed the front. Oh.
Yeah.
I was the only moron then. Okay.
No, I'm with you.
I mean, we didn't want to say it, but
clearly that's just the way of the show.
The other thing, real quick, that I did want to say, as far as players kind of breaking out, is I think tonight was Terry's best game. On that power play alone, I thought you saw a skill set that is going to be valuable at an NHL level.
Okay, really explain this point, because the people, I think when you watch the game, and I've been very guilty of ripping on him. What did you see with Terry offensively where you're like, and he didn't convert?
Right. Yeah.
What'd you see here?
I think for me, it was definitely on the power play where he looked the best, but he was skating with the puck. He was making passes. He was looking to get the puck back. You saw him probing. There were a couple of times where you could see he wanted to make that cross-eyed pass, and it wasn't there, and so he ripped a shot. He's got a good shot, and he's got good vision, and he can make good passes. I think he's 82, 85 area, like as far as like out of 100, like grades all around on that offensive side. I don't think he's going to be a game-breaking talent, but I do think he can be a very good supplemental offensive talent. And I think he will develop well enough that he's not going to be a liability on the back in his own zone, and I think he's going to have I think that's going to be very beneficial. But I do think for me that it's just he looked like he was the one running the power play for, 30 seconds at a time every now and then. And I think for me that's huge, because I definitely understand the criticisms of him in the past where he hasn't looked quite engaged or he's looked unsure of himself. And, I said this on Twitter earlier, but like, you see with him and Steele this year, I feel like, oh yeah, this is who maybe they can become. I don't think either of them are obviously there yet. I think they both have plenty of room to grow, and a lot of that will be mental and getting more consistent. But the skill set that can make them an effective NHL player is there. So
to tie a bow on tonight's game with our breakdown here, to me, I know it's a loss. And I got to say, kudos to everyone who came out to the show tonight. We have over 30 people, or about 30 people in the chat right now. It's pretty awesome after an OT loss on a Friday night. Given it's quarantine, no one had right. I want to say I took a lot of positives out of this. Yeah, I screamed obscenities when they got scored on an overtime because I thought there was actually a chance that we were going to hold on and win this game. But, really, if you are looking at the Ducks, are there any adjustments you want to make going into Sunday's game, guys? Like, I really don't feel like there is, other than, hey, how about you start playing the same hockey you played in the first 4 minutes of the game on game 2 on Sunday?
Yeah.
Other than that, great game.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the Avs fans tonight, a lot of what they're saying is, we played last night against LA, and the Avs did not look like a team that played last night. And that's credit to their skill and their fitness ability and the players that they have. I mean, they look like they had a couple days rest and they were ready to go in this game. And there's a few times where they fell flat during the game, but they picked it right back up. And, they got the goal that ended up putting them ahead. And obviously McKinnon's penalty shot that was saved by Gibson. But, this is one of the best teams in the league and by, a lot of people's standards. And I think the Ducks held their own tonight and fully deserved the point that they got. And when you look at the last game that went to overtime against Vegas, I don't think they deserved that point, and they scraped out and got it because of goaltending and because a little bit of luck going their way. But in this one, this is a game I can confidently say, the Ducks deserved a point and should feel a little hard done by that they didn't get the win and didn't seal the 2 points.
Yeah, I think. You look at the game, you look at the way it kind of played out. I mean, I'll be frank. I was on the phone before the game earlier, and I was like, they're going to get speed bagged. Like, it's going to be ugly. It's going to be like that Nashville game tonight that was 7-0. I just wasn't expecting good things. And I think there were times where you did see the Ducks chase around their own end and looking a little out of position here and there and things like that. But I think overall, they played more consistently. They looked much more engaged. I think they get, you know what I mean? Especially for a team that is lacking that legitimate high-end talent. This is the kind of scrappy game. This is like the better version of the Vegas loss, right? Where you're like, they didn't really play great, but Gibby saved their butt. Well, tonight you're just like, oh, well, they actually played all right, and Gibby saved their ass. And so, they get that extra point, but they definitely looked like they had earned that point more than they did in that Vegas game.
There was a point in this game, and I'm trying to remember, and I'm looking back at my notes for the guy. I don't see where I put the note in here, but where they withheld Nashville, or Jesus, Nashville, you said Nashville threw me off. They withheld the Avs from a shot on goal for over 10 minutes. So, yes, kudos to Gibby 100%. I mean, I've already been massaging that guy's shoulders since we got on the show, which is very unlike me. But looking at the game right here, I mean, to not let a shot on goal like that, to be able to stymie this Avs team on their tired second game, like this beginning of the season, you guys are professional athletes. It's not that bad. You travel from LA to Anaheim. It's not like LA ran you up and down the ice. They weren't that good. You played a sloppy game and lost. You were up 2-0, whatever. But the Ducks, I just really feel played just an outstanding game. I was very happy with this loss, as much as I could be, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. All you want to see is an effort, right? That's all you want to see this season is an effort and to make the games exciting and to not get speed bag like Stephen said. Like we all thought going into this game, no matter what, if it's a back-to-back game for Colorado or not, like they're a superior team and they have legitimate superstars on their team, not just one, probably 3 or 4. It's a mismatch of any matchup you can look across the league. It's as big a mismatch as any, and I'm never like to say I'm happy with the loss, but when you look at the effort they put out there, like we said before, I think they deserved a point and they probably deserved 2. And if they had snuck away with a win here, I don't think anybody would have said that the Ducks weren't value for the 2 points or the 1 point that they got.
No, absolutely, man. I can't agree with that more. Before we get to our post game notes, we get into the Dubois stuff, and we have I think we only have one question on Twitter, which is great. Everyone was just jumping in the chat here and sending the questions via chat, so that's awesome too. But I want to say, if you guys are new to the show or just started listening to us recently, we have our Patreon. I don't know if you guys are familiar with our Patreon. It's patreon.com/forevermighty. You can find it there. You can also find it at forevermighty.com. But it's where we give you guys some Patreon rewards. You help the show out a bit. And then we also get fun shows where we're trying to get Eddie to drink a bag of milk on a show because he's Canadian. And over the course of the season, we're trying to see if we can push to find a way to do that. It'll be fun. But our Pucks and Brews will be tomorrow afternoon. We don't want to run into football Sunday. So I think it's a 1 or 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time start for you guys in Canada or back east. But we're going to drink, talk hockey, talk a lot of shit, apparently, because we do that a lot on the show too, and have a good time. So Forever Mighty, it's our patreon.com/forevermighty. We can go and check out the Patreon there and help the show out a bit, and we give you back with we get, like, this year we're getting hoodies made. We had hats made last year. We try to give you guys some merch from us. When the season's going, we also give away free Ducks tickets, which is pretty awesome too. So yeah, go check that out. Patreon.com/forevermighty. Help the show, and we kick back some goodies to you guys, and you get more of our podcast.
Answer a question, a Patreon-related question in the chat here from J7, because I was going to bring this up anyway, and it's perfect because he ended up asking the question. So he said, "Did I ever get the Pink Whitney that I was supposed to get for New Year's?" So if anybody in the chat or anybody listening right now is a Patreon subscriber, you know that when we did our Pucks and Brews on New Year's, I tried to go to the store and get Pink Whitney. It was all sold out, and I wasn't able to get it. I had to get, I think I had Bacardi or something like that. So I went today, and they had Pink Whitney. So I do have Pink Whitney for tomorrow.
You do have it for tomorrow?
I do a little.
I was just gonna rip you apart and talk all kinds of crap on you right now, but you actually.
I actually got it, and I have it for tomorrow's show as a makeup for New Year's.
Oh, this will be the second time in history I've seen Eddie drunk. That's gonna be tomorrow on the Pucks and Fruit show. That's gonna be fun, man. That's gonna be a good time. I'm very proud of you, Ed. And for those of you guys who don't know Eddie too much, Eddie's not a big drinker. So the fact that Eddie went to the store and made sure he got Pink Whitney, which is an awfully sweet drink, I want to say. I say awful because it almost tastes good, but then it's like really sweet. It's just not my thing. But very glad Eddie got
I had to make up for New Year's, so tomorrow's.
And you were doing shots on New Year's.
Yeah, but I promised I'd get Pink Whitney, and they were sold out, so I had to make up for it.
Golf clap. Golf clap. I love it.
Cheers,
That'll be a
bud.
good time tomorrow. So let's get on to the giant elephant in the room that everyone's waiting to talk about here, Pierre-Luc Dubois. We all talked about this a game or two ago and continued this talk throughout our Discord chat, our Twitter chat, amongst ourselves. It's been well known he's on the chopping block. If you guys saw his last shift for John Tortorella was I ripped John Tortorella a lot, guys. I don't know if you guys saw it. I put it. I think I sent it either just to Ed or to the podcast group. I think I sent it to our podcast group chat and or one of our chats, and it was his last shift where he just didn't do anything.
Yep.
And I was like, I'd bench that asshole too. He's not playing hockey.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't blame him for benching him. It was bad. He tried to engage in a puck battle and he like hugged the guy and then slowly skated back to the bench. I mean, listen. The guy asked for a trade. He doesn't want to play there. He's gonna go out there and play because he's a hockey player and he's got to play for the team. But you can tell there's issues with him and the coach, and that was clear in that game. I mean, normally you'd get benched for a couple minutes for not showing enough effort, and Torts made sure he made a point that this is a guy they don't want on the team here, and proceeded to not play him for the rest of the game. He played 3 minutes and 55 seconds in the first period, and then sat on the bench for the entire second and third period. Yeah, part of it is his play and his laziness on that play, but another part of it, and a big part of it, is Torts trying to make a point here that to Jarmo Kekalainen, to his own GM, is like, hey man, I'm not going to play this guy. This guy doesn't want to be here. You can see he doesn't want to be here. I'm not going to play him, so trade him. And now you look at how, since that incident, trade talks have heated up, and there's 3 teams heavily interested, including the Ducks, and all reports say that this is likely something that gets sorted by tomorrow or Sunday or early into next week.
Yeah, I can't say that I've watched a lot of Columbus this season.
Oh, what do you mean? You don't turn on
But
and watch
yeah,
them
exactly.
play?
I go out of my way to watch boring hockey because I don't get enough of that when I root for my own stupid team. Dumb as hell. But I think for me the thing is like, you don't ever want to see somebody sandbagging it like that out there. You know what I mean? Like, there's a level of professionalism that you're looking for, and all that kind of crap. And I get it, but like, dude, Torts is a dick. And like, the thing about it for me is like, he threw him under the bus so hard at the beginning of the season, just like, oh, I don't know, you have to talk to him, blah 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 blah, just all that Torts crap. And it's like, you know what, dude? If you don't want to talk about it, say you don't want to talk about it, but this fucking passive-aggressive crap, like, you're the head coach of a hockey team, grow. So, I don't know that I'm going to hold it against him too much for, just sandbag it out there a little bit. He got sad, now he's going to get what he wants. I can't say I blame him. It's going to work out great for the guy. Unless he ends up in Winnipeg, and then he's going to, he's going to think he made the wrong deal with the Devils.
So it's Montreal, Winnipeg, and Anaheim.
That seems to be it.
Montreal says no Suzuki, which immediately, if I'm Jarmo Kekalainen, I'm like, okay, F Montreal, because that's what I want. If that's how I'm looking at this, I want young, successful players or prospects.
They want roster
picks.
players.
Like,
too.
I want a lot of
that's
young
the key
guys.
thing for Columbus here is like they.
Do they really want roster players?
All reports say they do. I think Columbus thinks they're not as bad as some people think they are. And I think, they made a big swing to get Max Domi. They made some roster changes of their own. I think that, they've got 2 great young defensemen in Werenski and Jones. I don't think they're a Stanley Cup contender by any means, but, they want a player who can step in and play this year. That would be one of the best defensive pairings
in the NHL, though, by far.
Yeah.
That is.
But if you're losing Pierre-Luc
Jones,
Dubois,
Werenski?
Yes. They're very good.
They're very good.
I think they're underrated too. Seth Jones, put up a ton of points a couple seasons ago and hasn't quite matched that, and it's kind of flew under the radar. But they're a tough pair to play against. But if you're Columbus right now and you're losing Pierre-Luc Dubois, who's your number 1 center, they want a player who can come in, and obviously nobody's going to do the same job, but they want a player or 2 who can step into their lineup and replace that production. And whether they get some prospects, lesser prospects, or picks as part of that deal to kind of supplement it, it kind of seems that way. But it doesn't seem like Columbus is really dictating these discussions, because Elliot Friedman put out an article tonight to kind of react to this news. He said the Jets' offer includes 2 players on their team who've requested a trade, in Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovich. So right there for Columbus, it's enticing because you get Patrick Laine and you get a player who's a superstar or close to being a superstar already, and Roslovic can kind of, he's not a number one center by any means. He's a third or fourth line center, but he can jump into the lineup, and he's a young player.
But how does Laine fit on that team as a guy who's already disgruntled where he's at, and he's not even playing for John Tortorella yet?
Yeah,
he's not,
and he's got 1 year
trying
left.
To play under trying to play under John Tortorella is like trying to breathe when someone puts a pillow under your face while you try to breathe at night. Like that's him trying to prevent you from scoring goals. If you're Patrick Laine, you hate every second of this talk. You're like, really? I'm going to go there and waste my time and earn $6.7 million and then go
somewhere else
and just hold out till they trade my rights to someone else.
But not even that.
RFA.
If you're Laine, and the reason why, Laine is the big name, and I think on paper Winnipeg probably is the best offer because it's Laine. But if you're Columbus, you're wondering if he's going to re-sign with you at the end of next season, which he probably won't. I mean, Patrick Laine wants to go to a big hockey market. He wants to be the number one guy on a big popular team, and Columbus does not fit that description. And
so how does anybody in Columbus look at this and go, we got to fire our coach? We lost Bobrovsky. We lost Panarin. We've lost other players. Was it Josh Anderson able to play there? Like, you ask anybody who's played there, they're like, get me the hell out of here. I can't play under Barry Trotz. And everyone's like, no, let's try to bring other really good players in here. It's a good idea. I just don't get it.
No, I think that's 100% the question that I would be asking if I was in Columbus. Is how are they going to continually pick a coach over talent when the coach, I think it's hard to argue that Torts isn't an effective coach.
True.
He creates a system, they play well, they put probably
Steven, he's
because
the winningest American coach of all time. That's at the top of his resume in bold 72-print font at the very top.
And I am the talkingest Stephen in the history of Forever Mighty, and they're both worth about the same. I think for me, it's just he doesn't play exciting hockey. He's not a particularly... Okay, first of all, no, I'm not letting this stand. Whoever said Torts is Mourinho is wrong. That is not... Get the hell out of here with that. Torts is not Mourinho. Oh, do not drag my beloved Jomo.
But if you're Roman Kekalainen, don't you fire him and bring in Gerard Gallant like that and be like, hey, everyone likes Gerard.
That's the thing. He's right there.
I don't get it.
There's something there.
Again, you're going to get a coach who it's not necessarily going to be as much of an accountability thing, but we definitely know that he's able to take a rather misfit roster and create a system in which they can play effective hockey. William Karlsson, I don't know if Columbus remembers that they had him at one point. He blew up. It is really hard to think that bringing in Gallant in the offseason doesn't kind of maybe help PLD interested in staying. I think there's a much better chance that he wants to stay if he's got a coach who's going to allow him to put himself in a position to be successful.
Awesome. Okay, I know I'm cutting you off here, but that's the exact point I want to drive home on this chat to bring it back in, because I kind of derailed us talking about everyone else other than Anaheim. That's my point right here. So you look at the coach in Montreal, and you look at the coaching staff over in Winnipeg, and then you see the coaching staff in Anaheim. Dallas Eakins has a reputation right now where he's able to help out young players. He was very successful with the goals players. Now he's in the big show, and that's the big thing we've all been talking about for Mighty now about probably the reason why the Ducks brought him in, not just because he was the AHL coach, but because he knows all these players who've been here for a long time and they thrived under him. And he's not the a-hole coach. He's the player-friendly guy. Do you think Dubois would rather come here and maybe resign? And I'm not saying Columbus makes that deal anyway. But if you're Pierre-Luc Dubois, would you be pushing for sunny Southern California where no one knows your French-Canadian ass anyway? And, dude, you get to play for a guy who likes you, wants you to score goals?
I think
it makes all the sense.
I think it's enticing. I think Anaheim is his number one destination? No, that's Montreal. And I don't think there's it's been
let me shovel snow for 5 months. What a great life.
It's no secret. The French-Canadian kid wants to go back and play in his hometown and play in Montreal. But can
you Canadians and your love is
can Montreal meet what Columbus wants? I don't think they can without Nick Suzuki. I don't think they really can. I mean, unless
Right.
it's Kotkaniemi, and even right now, I think Suzuki is definitely more valuable than Kotkaniemi is, even though Kotkaniemi was drafted higher. And, I think Winnipeg's offer is going to be Laine. They're going to stick to that. They're going to say, we have the best player, but Columbus is going to be scared off by that. And I think Anaheim is really the only interesting one here because we have no idea what they're going to do. There's a lot of different avenues they could take. We would like to speculate that Raquel is an enticing option for anybody, and I think he's probably at the top of that list. And you have to cover some salary there, and Pierre-Luc Dubois makes 5 for the next 2. Raquel makes 3.7 for the next 2. So, whether you throw in a Terry or a Jones or whatever to cover the remaining 1.5 or 1.3 to even out the salaries there, and then you include a prospect or a pick, that you start to kind of work the framework of what a deal could look like. But at the end of the day, is that enough? And would Pierre-Luc Dubois want to come here? I mean, he doesn't have a no trade clause. It's not his say in the end. But after 2 years are up, is he going to stay? And I think that's, if you're Bob Murray, that's something you have to, even if Bob Murray knows he's not going to be here in 2 years, that's still something you have to analyze. Is this guy going to be here? Just like Columbus was looking at Laine and saying, is he going to re-sign with us after next season?
It's in typical Ducks fashion right now, where the biggest and best hardcore insiders can't even get an effing name out of Anaheim as to who's involved in the talks. You would get Laine. We get Ross Levert. They're not going to include Nick Suzuki in Montreal. Anaheim increases their offer. What the hell? Can we get a name? Can we say it's not Drysdale, not Zegras? It's roster players. Nothing. I'm
we got one
curious
thing.
what this is.
We only got one thing, and it was from David Pagnotta at the 4th period. He said, "Don't expect Adam Henrique part of the deal because Columbus is on his no trade list." So that's not even really a leak. It's just.
Can you blame him? I think that's on everyone's no trade list.
Yeah, it's just knowing the details, the inside details of Henrique's no trade list, which an insider like David Pagnotta would know, and it's not so much knowing what the Ducks are offering right now. It's just knowing that Henrique has Columbus on that no trade list. So that's the only name we can cross off for Anaheim at this point. Other than that, we would love to think that Drysdale and Zegras are untouchable. We've got no indication that they are or that they aren't. I would hope.
But that's the most on-brand shit ever. Is we don't tell you anything. Just hope we're in on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we found out they were this in on it is honestly to me remarkable. It's one of those things where it almost feels like, you're going to be reading 31 Thoughts next week, and it's going to be like Thought 26. I heard Anaheim was in, but they couldn't make a deal work. Wonder what they would have paid. And that's fucking it. That's the whole point.
Anaheim offered Delorier, Derek Durant, and Ricard Raquel for Pierre-Luc Dubois, and Columbus said no.
Do we not all think that's what's going to happen, though? Is we got so close, but like you said, in Elliot Friedman's 31 Thoughts article a week from now, when he's breaking down the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade to fucking Montreal or Winnipeg, it's going to be, Anaheim came up with an offer, but it just didn't meet what Columbus was looking for. There'll be no details of what they offered or who they offered, or maybe it'll be a little tidbit of Raquel was part of the deal that fell apart. But we always get close to these. Who remembers when we were close to Max Pacioretty and almost getting him from Montreal?
I completely forgot about
one
that
of the
until you said it right now.
for Max Pacioretty, and then he went to Vegas because the Ducks didn't want to meet the offer for Max Pacioretty. And
wasn't it Steele?
It might have been
Steele to break
it might have been, and it's
Really?
just it's just on
I
brand.
think it was. I get up. I think Steele was the point that Murray.
This is back
do.
when Steele had his
was-
130-point season too, and his value was never higher.
Yeah, because this was just after his draft year, I think.
Yeah, but
I've been saying it for years. I'm not, and I've never claimed. I have claimed to be a really good general manager. I know, but not saying I am. But we overvalue prospects so much as fans. If someone's offering Max Pacioretty for Steele, an unknown quantity for a guy I know can score goals and was a leader and is highly regarded, I'm making that trade.
yeah, I don't think it was
Making
one
that
for
trade.
one. There were more parts to that for sure, but
Yeah.
But Steele was the one, again, the one detail that got leaked. And, would I love Pierre-Luc Dubois? I would. Do I think the Ducks are, top of Columbus's list? No. I think it all comes down to what Montreal ultimately was willing to offer, and if the Ducks can match that and be significantly better than what Montreal is offering. But in all honesty, I feel like this could end with, an article like that saying, yeah, the Ducks were, super interested, but they couldn't get it done, because we've seen this multiple times. Evander Kane, Max Pacioretty, and now if it's Pierre-Luc Dubois, it sucks, but it's not like we haven't seen this before.
No, but I mean, when I posted the question on our Twitter today, we got a couple dozen responses, and just scrolling through them, the name that pops in constantly is Rickard Rakell, obviously. But then you see tidbits here of like Steele or Comtois, a young guy who has a chance to develop into a middle six player who could score goals. Maybe that's a possibility. So I kind of want to just tie a neat little bow on this, because I feel like we could talk circles on this for hours on what kind of trade we would give. But if you are Bob Murray and you get a call from Jarmo Kekalainen tomorrow morning, and he's like, look, what are you going to offer me? Because that's what I would do. I would never go to him and say, I want this guy. I'm like, what are you going to give me? And then we can negotiate from there.
Mm-hmm.
What would you offer him, Ed? If you were Bob Murray tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. to get a phone call from Jarmo?
Yeah, I think it starts with Rickard Rakell, because the previous production, the change of scenery narrative, the contract is just so valuable, especially to a team like Columbus as well. 2 years under his contract, so you can kind of really see what you want. And I think the prospects of them re-signing him are better than a player like Patrik Laine. And doesn't Rickard Rakell just seem like a player who would go to Columbus and do a job and kind of get back to being what we thought he was? Maybe not a 30-goal scorer, but a 20-25 goal scorer, like playing with a player like Max Domi. Like you could see it, right? That's the thing. And from there, I think it is one of the three kids, Terry, Jones, Comtois, Steele, who get thrown in there. Maybe it's a Josh Mahura. I think you include a player who is maybe not a top six roster player right now, but is a young one who has a chance to break into a top six. I think that kind of gets thrown in the deal, and then from there it's likely a draft pick, because yes, Columbus wants roster players who can impact now, but I think when you look at their draft history recently, they haven't had a ton of picks, and they're looking to kind of fill the cupboards back up. And whether that's I doubt it's a 2021 first, but it could be a 2022 that's protected, top 10 protected, that pushes into 2023. That's kind of the avenue I get. I think I sent to you guys earlier, the most likely trade in my mind that I could see going out is Rakell, Terry, and a 2022 first. Whether that gets it done, I don't know. I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois is already a first-line center. He's a 60-point guy right now, and the value on those guys in an open market is huge. I think the one thing to keep in mind is he's asked for a trade, and Columbus is under pressure right now to get him out, because there's, if he was playing fine and the coach was playing him and there was no issues, then there really is no pressure for Columbus to move him, because he's got 2 years left. But there's behind-the-scenes issues now that are forcing their hand, and I think teams know that.
Steven?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I get the phone call from me, my thing is, I'll give you Rakell, I'll give you Manson, I'll give you a top 10 protected first, and I'll give you any kid you want. You can't have Drysdale, you can't have Zegras. Anybody else. That's it. I'm starting right there. But I will give you Rakell, I will give you Manson, and I will give you a protected first-round pick, or unprotected second and third straight up. I think that's where you got to start, because I think...
So for both of you guys right now, Drysdale and Zegras are off the table completely?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they have to be, because... So this is actually something I kind of wanted to get to, because I think it's really interesting, is the really exciting thing, right, from a Ducks perspective about trading for Dubois is he's 22 years old. He doesn't turn 23 till this season is over. So he'll be 23 for all of next season. I think he is theoretically tied to Zegras, because I think what you have is you have the two forwards who you think are going to be your rocks for the next, 4, 5, 10 years, whatever you want to look at it. If you just drop Dubois in and there isn't a player of Zegras' caliber to come up and bolster that forward lineup with him, I don't know I don't know how much farther that gets you than what you have now.
Do you really think Yarmo's going to be able to ask for that, though? Because he's actually getting rid of a player that doesn't want to play for him.
That's what I mean.
So,
There's no leverage.
so that's so hard to
Yeah,
convince somebody, give me your best assets. And you're like, if that guy was kicking ass and we're talking 20 games down the line, he's got 10 goals and 10 assists, he's murdering the league right now, and he loves playing hockey, then maybe I want that guy. But this guy's like phoning it in, hates Columbus. Second of all, he's French-Canadian. So I don't know if I
Hey,
want that
those are
guy.
the only
on my
guys
team.
we have that score goals, so shut
I
up.
know. I'm just kidding. And I'm not really kidding, but and you want me to give you basically, this candy I've been trying to find for almost a decade now, just to give it to you on a guy that's a 50-point guy, when Zegras could literally be a 70, 80-point guy at his ceiling.
Yeah.
Or more. We don't know. Drysdale, we'll see what he becomes. He's definitely a top 4 defenseman no matter what. I think he has the potential to be a 1-2. That's going to be really interesting to see what Yarmo eventually is going to be able to get. Because, do you guys think that Nick Suzuki is better than Trevor Zegras?
No, but the hype right now, right? And I think Nick Suzuki is a great player. I think he's better than Trevor Zegras right now. I think long-term projections and hype and when you talk to different scouts and everything across the league, is Zegras is going to be a better player, projected to be. But that's the thing, they're all projections. So right now, does Nick Suzuki have more value than Trevor Zegras? Yes, he does, because he
looks fancy on Instagram highlights.
Yeah, and he's getting it done. He got it done for Montreal last year. He got it done in the playoffs. He's getting it done now. He has a lot more value, I think, than Trevor Zegras does to a team like Columbus. But Montreal's not willing to part with that because, again, I think for the Ducks, and similar to Montreal, trading Trevor Zegras for Pierre-Luc Dubois is you take 1 step forward and 2 steps backward.
2 steps back.
Because
Absolutely.
you've got Pierre-Luc Dubois, who makes you better now, and you're a better team now, and he's a great player, and maybe he's a better player over his career than Trevor Zegras is, but who do you put him with? You've now traded the player you were going to put him with over a long period of time. Now you have to go out and get that player again. So how many years of Dubois' career do you waste, and does that impact him signing with you 2 years down the road? And all those questions come into it there, and in my mind, the same thing is with Drysdale too. You finally got your right shot puck moving defenseman. Now you trade him for a number 1 center. Well, now you got to go.
The Ducks cannot move a defenseman.
You got to go out and get.
They just
but
can't.
they can. But they can, I don't think it's Drysdale. Can they move Fowler? Yes. Can they move Lindholm? Yes. Theoretically, yes.
No, they can't move Lindholm. No, they
I know
really can't.
you love him, but can they move? Can they make that move? Can they make that move right now?
Sure.
How old is Lindholm? 27, 26?
26.
26-year-old, top 4 two-way defenseman for a number 1 center. Can they and should they make that move? Probably. Is it
immediately that this trade gets made? Sam Steele's gone, and that's part of the package. I think it's going to be Steele. I think it's going to be Raquel, and it's going to be either a prospect or a pick along with.
I think you can
for
justify
Dubois.
that though, because
I think that's it.
Because
Oh, yeah.
trading Sam Steele for Pierre-Luc Dubois isn't as a 1 step forward, 2 step backward situation, because Pierre-Luc Dubois comes in and fills that hole where Sam Steele is leaving.
And then some.
And yeah, and then some. And right now we have Sam Steele and the number of center prospects after him, Grew and whoever, right? It's not like you're trading Steele and all those center prospects, right? You've got Dubois, who comes into that spot, so you're not losing any depth there, right? So their center depth isn't getting worse; it's getting better. And then and then you include Raquel in there, and the team maybe gets worse this year by removing 2 of those players, but how valuable is Rickard Raquel to the future of this team right now? It's not a major impact when you think of what Zegras could do with a player like Pierre-Luc Dubois and what Drysdale could do with the 2 of them in the roster, and building around. It's building around Pierre-Luc Dubois, not trading the assets you're going to build around him with to get him.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Steven.
Oh no, I was gonna say, in the chat, Operation said exactly what I was thinking. If you bring in Dubois, you got to bring up Zegras. You have to. Nobody tell Jason that I said this. But when it really kind of sounded like we were like for real in the mix, like the thing that I actually was thinking about is, you kind of can see the ghost of what Chicago had, which is an offensive playmaking.
Are you gonna say trade John Gibson?
No,
Okay.
but you're looking at, maybe you put Zegras as a winger in that Patrick Kane driving a line on his own kind of thing. And then you've got PLD to be that really strong two-way center and a clear number one center. You got something there. I think that's incredibly interesting. I
And
think
he's a
obviously-
number one center that's going to come to Anaheim and not have to play those minutes.
Yeah.
He's going to kill it if he comes here because he's not going to have to play those heavy minutes. He's just not
He'll have
going
freedom.
to this year.
He'll have freedom more so here than I think anybody else, any other team on this list, in the sense that the Ducks can insulate him around Getzlaf and Henrique, where he's not coming in. He's like, okay, he's going to come in and they're going to say, you have to improve our power play. Sure, there's going to be pressure there. But is he going to come in and have to be a two-way defensive center when the underlying numbers show he isn't that? It's funny how we look at these big power forward guys and immediately say, oh, he's a really good big two-way center, and then you go look at the underlying numbers, and Pierre-Luc Dubois isn't a great defensive center, and he's kind of tasked to do that in Columbus, and he comes to Anaheim where Getzlaf can be a defensive center and has been, and Adam Henrique can be a defensive center, and you can say to Pierre-Luc Dubois, okay, you're our guy who's going to go out there and generate offense. That's all we want you to do. And guess what Pierre-Luc Dubois is great at? Driving offense by himself.
No, the NHL needs to break the mold. Coaching staffs, for the most part, there are some outliers that don't do this. They need to break the mold of you have to play a 200-foot game. You know what? Sometimes I'm just really fucking good at scoring goals, dude. How about you don't make me back check 200 feet and then expect me to hustle back up and carry the play this way and score goals? There's role players for those situations.
Build a team that can
if you
defend
were
around
that good, exactly. If you're that good at your job, and you excel in one area better than the other, just do it. Just do that job. The NHL, I almost feel like the Ducks are coming out of the Stone Age with not having an analytics department. We get the younger coach who's more in tune with players, but we brought in Sutter to help out. He's a retired Kings coach. Jesus, do we really need Daryl Sutter here to whisper in his damn ear like Dallas isn't smart enough to run a team? This team just baffles me on some ends, and then other ends I was like, wow, okay, so we're coming along a little bit. We're in on Pierre-Luc Dubois now. I kind of want to put a bow on the show, guys. We're over an hour 10, and we could talk.
I gotta say
forever,
one thing
so...
though, before we move on for this.
Sure.
The prospect of having a French connection line potentially of Comtois, Pierre-Luc Dubois, and Jacob Perreault.
That's the end. We're done. We're hanging up. I'm not doing this with you tonight.
I didn't even mention Benoit Olivier Gros. I left him off.
did,
I left him off though. I know,
twice.
but I left
That's the
him off
second
here
time.
in the French connection line. Comtois, Dubois, and Perreault.
I think it's really interesting, and honestly, I think it's very generous of you that you're willing to let Dubois be the second line center behind Gruel.
How about this? From now on, we do put 2 Pucks and Brews shows for Patreon. Throughout the month, anytime that Eddie says Gruel on a show, we tally. And then that's how many shots he has to do on the upcoming Pucks and Brews show for our Patreon members. We actually get to see Eddie get loaded. Anytime he mentions Gruel, Eddie, you're going to be hammered, dude.
Dude, he's going to get fucking alcohol poisoning.
I can't help it, man. I love the guy.
That would be so good. So the last thing I want to say about this potential trade, I want 2 things out of you guys, and don't run on for 30 seconds. But just real quick, name the 2 players you think are involved in the trade. If realistically we think Bob Murray's doing, and the percentage of the chance you think it's going to happen.
You go ahead.
Raquel 100%, and I'll stick with what I said earlier. Troy Terry. I think it could easily be Sam Steele. I think it's one of those 2.
And what's the likelihood the trade's going to happen in general is what I meant. Sorry, percentage-wise.
Yeah, percentage-wise, I'd say 50%. I think they're above Winnipeg. I think they're behind Montreal. But I think it all comes down to what Montreal can offer.
Yeah, I think it's Raquel and Steele.
Me too.
And I think you're looking at 35-40%. I don't know that it's much higher than that. I think there are a lot of things in their favor. But I'm going to go about 35-40%.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that, because I already said I agree with Steven on the players, for sure. We all agree on Raquel. I would love it if Terry left. We got to keep Steele. But but I don't think it's going to happen. And I think the percentage of this happening, I think it's going to come down to he's going to ask, do Americans drink milk out of a carton or out of a bag?
God.
And then the BPH is going to come to the question. He's strict on his diet. He doesn't want to have any chemicals in his system, so he's going to come down here and he wants to crack open a milk jug down here where we don't have bags of milk. So I think it's going to be it'll be in his contract. He's just going to have that.
Wouldn't it be just a nice shift in direction to actually win one once?
Oh my God! If we get Pierre-Luc Dubois,
you know what I mean.
If we get Pierre-Luc Dubois, I'm going to go buy a bottle of Pink Whitney and drink with you.
Yeah,
hey, dead up. You know what? If we get Dubois, we will do an entire Pink Whitney show.
Man, if we get Dubois before Pucks and Brews tomorrow, man. If we get Dubois, if you're listening to the show before 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. Pacific time on what it was tomorrow Saturday.
You're already in Saturday.
Go to
you're in the future.
Patreon.com/forevermighty and subscribe, even if it's for 1 month, and listen to that show. Because that show is going to be wild if we get Pierre-Luc Dubois.
That's going to be awesome. I think I want to just get to the one question we got because I hate not getting to people who answer our question call. Let me get to it here. I'm always so bad at 5 seconds, so everyone get mad at me as I'm dragging the show out. Let's see. This is a doozy. Here it is. It comes from Chase. He says, do you guys think the Ducks are still in on Dubois? Does it include Zegras or Drysdale? We've already answered that question, Chase. Thank you for sending that in. It was the main portion of our show, obviously, after the show breakdown, but appreciate the question. And if you guys don't have anything else, I think we're it for the night. We're done. It's 2:20 a.m. for Eddie over there and somewhere in Toronto. And for Steven and I, it's time to party. It's like 11:20. Thank you guys all for coming out. Those who listen the next day, we love you guys too. And we look forward to talking to you guys again on Sunday night. Have a great night, everybody.